Drake carefully crimped the fuse into the homemade blasting cap. Really nothing more than a shell casing stuffed with priming compound. Then, he gently threaded the fuse through the hole in the pipe's cap before screwing it on and adding it to the pile. Tedious though it was, they'd be needed when the time came and they had enough manpower to fight back. Glancing over, Drake watched as Destriel rolled a barrel of SP-90 explosive into the armory and stood it up on its end. They'd found the barrels of explosive putty in an unfinished section of the bunker. It was pure luck the barrels were still stable after sitting for who knows how long. Drake reached down and picked up a glob of the grayish-yellow putty from his bucket, forming it into a ball and tossing it between his hands. An idea formed in his head as he looked at the 10 or so barrels by the armory door. The barrel wobbled as Destrier stood it back on its end, wiping the sweat from his brow. Drake looked at the ball of explosive putty in his hands, then back to Destrier. "Hey, Destri, how much of this stuff do we have?" The mountain of a man looked back at Drake, before his eyes glossed over, thinking the question over before responding. "We've got another 10 barrels down below. Each one, if it's full, weighs about 200 pounds, so 4,000 pounds, give or take." A smile came to Drake's face as he looked at the metal barrels that contained the explosive. "Destrier, I have an idea." Destrier glanced down at the barrels, then the ball of explosives in Drake's hand. The big man looked confused for a moment, before it dawned on him, a grin coming to his face. "Big-ass bomb?" Destrier asked. "Big-ass bomb," Drake confirmed. The two men, with a gleam in their eyes, got to work. Brown sat by the holotable, viewing the area around the bunker's disguised entrance through public cameras. The area had burnt to the ground a few years ago and had never been rebuilt. Most buildings were empty Duracrete shells of their former glory. After all, this had once been a human-controlled city. The old Geknosian lamented the loss of the beauty he remembered. The human boy who'd... "Hey, Brown, I've got an idea." Brown shook himself from his memories, craning his neck around to look at the grease and spot-covered Drake standing in the doorway. "What in the hell were you?" "Making a big-ass bomb. It has to do with my idea." "Okay, moving on. What do you need?" Drake jogged into the room and vaulted over the couch to sit next to Brown before continuing. "Okay, my original plan isn't going to work until we have a lot more manpower. What I need is to know if there are any Geknosian military bases in Golgotha." The old lizard nodded and switched to the 3D map. Zooming in, he marked a large, open area near the middle of the city in red. "There's a few, but they're mostly small garrisons for the monarchy's rapid response doctrine. This is the largest and most complex. It's not displayed on the map, but this isn't just any base." The grimy human leaned forward, examining the location as Brown continued. "This is where they store the majority of their munitions and vehicles. They get resupplied every week if they haven't changed the schedule on me." Drake glanced over, but said nothing. Brown's past wasn't the concern right now. Pointing at the map, Drake asked, "Where would be the best spot to stick 200 pounds of SP-90 if we wanted to wipe it off the map?" The old lizard felt his age as he slowly, incredulously, turned his head to look at Drake in utter shock and disbelief. The boy had to be joking, but the determined gleam in his eye said otherwise, rubbing his face to disperse the oncoming migraine. "You're not joking, are you?" "No, sir," the human said with a grin, making Brown sigh in desperation. "No, dear Lord of mercy. Drake, I'm not sure if I should slap you or hug you. Anyway, your best bet would be either the armory or the supply warehouse." The old lizard drew 2 circles, one smack dab in the middle of the base, one in the lower right. "The armory would probably amplify the explosive force, because it's just a massive fucking vault of explosives. But the warehouse is directly in the middle of the compound, and if you can, coerce a supply transport driver to get you past the gates, you'll be delivered there without issue." Drake stood, staring at the circle that marked the warehouse, an odd look on his face. "How do you know all this, old man?" Brown sighed, hand twitching as he remembered those dark times in his younger days. "I was
Conscripted for active duty for 40 years, young man. I'd be damned if I didn't remember the hell I was forced to live in.
The ex-slave nodded, almost sympathetically. I understand. Maybe not, but kind of. We were all slaves to the monarchy, Brown. I guess you aren't so different in that respect. The old, tired lizard nodded and sat back down on the couch.
Do me a favor, young man.
Drake glanced at the old Geknosian, and Brown couldn't look him in the eye as he finished speaking.
There's a soldier by the name of Harl. He's my son. I just ask that you...
The swordsman's calloused hand landed on Brown's shoulder. I'll do my best to spare his life. I think I owe you that much.
Thank you. Now if you'll excuse me.
The human nodded and left Brown to his camera watching, oblivious to the tears that had formed in the lizard's eyes as Brown remembered the last thing he told his son, wishing he'd said nothing instead.